Hello. So I thought I might record this session purely in case anyone wants to watch me as I go along and like the sort of crap my mind comes up with. So I auditioned the samples and I quite like the reverse ambient and the guitar. So all I've done so far is I've just imported them, changed the project BPM to about 115, and they're both down to about -7. I'm just going to pan one, half left probably, and then one half right. And all I've done so far is I've just added an OTT to each channel in the limiter. So it sounds like this. I think you know this is going to be trappy. I'm just going to scan through with a filter like this, scan through and see if I can find the problematic bit that I don't really like in the sample and see if I can remove it. So I don't know if you can see it, but there was some slight ringing down there as well. But just A-Bing this EQ on this track sounds much cleaner, having cut this sort of band here. There's also something going down here, so I think I'll cut that as well, because why not? The OTT is going to be pulling up a lot of the frequency content up there as anyway, because it's a multi-band compression unit, and this particular preset just absolutely squashes the signal across all bands. But it blends a bit nicely now. So before bass drop in the sort of EDM trap I tend to make for these, I might just do like a boom there. So it's just going to be like a cut and then a sub hit or something along those lines. So I'm fairly happy with how these sound in unison. So what I'm going to do now is maybe we'll get that intro hi-hat going, the standard trap hi-hats. So I've made some sort of presets drum racks here, but I think in this instance what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make one from scratch and see what sample sort of match the content nicely. So this Lex Luger drum kit's really good for trap, so I'm just going to grab a few, I'm going mad, grab a few hi-hats from here. Ooh, that might be a nice snare. Just going to drop that into the rack for now, just in case I want to use that later. There we go, claps and snares. So I'm just turning, this is just to turn down the auditioning volume of the sample pack. I'm just going to sort of cycle through these and see if I like the sound of any claps. So let's just start with claps and see what we get. Oh, that's classic. Quite like this one as well. It's got some tail to it. They've obviously added some reverb to this tail here, so I'll keep that to hand as well. Oh, and also I know that if I type in overused, I'm going to find that overused trap snare that I made a recording of. Guarantee you've heard this sound before. Absolutely guarantee. Yeah. So we've got several interesting sounding claps. There's also this, which again I found quite interesting. So what I really want now are those classic hi-hats for trap. So let's just jump to here. That sounds classic. Let's grab that. Right click normalize samples just in case. So yeah, I like the sound of that. What I'm going to do now is I've just maxed out the velocity on these, but then I'm going to turn the volume dial in the drum rack to probably the maximum level I'd ever want the hat. And then what that allows me to do is play with the velocity down here to add some dynamics to the hi-hat. I'm happy with that at about -19. For cheats, I have a MIDI files pack and it's full of all kinds of crap. I have this here, which is for hi-hats. So I might try and drag and drop the rhythm and see how that goes into the sample. What I might find I need to do in actuality is to create another MIDI track with a single sampler in it and drag that Lexi sample onto that, because I think that MIDI file, instead of running across a single line, I think it uses multiple lines So that's how you'll get the retuning of the hi-hat as multiple MIDI notes are played. So let's just solo this and see how it sounds. And then change it to -19 as it was before. Normalize. And C3, which is our transposed note, is being played with this line here. So this is why this MIDI pack is pretty good, because it just has it aligned already. So I'm just gonna hold off on this channel for now and just audition this with the guitar and reverse ambient noise. So I can already say I don't like these, so instead of deleting them, I'm going to do something in Ableton called disabling. So hit the 0 button and it keeps them in the clip, but it won't play them. So in case I want to bring them back in later for whatever reason, they'll be there. And that was the same with some of these, but I'll listen through it again and see what I think. All right, this one I'm happy with, but these ones, in my mind, they slow it down a bit too much. Okay, well, we'll use that for now. And the way I'm going to approach this is I'm just going to put all the elements in one go, and then we'll actually craft it into a little bit of an intro, break, build, and drop, and see how that sounds. But for now, let's just try and build everything one place, and then we can chop and change. So I hit this little headphone icon as I move and highlight over the MIDI objects. We will get the sounds. Know what I'm playing. Well, I think we know which snare we're going to use already. It's funny because 115 is quite slow for a trap song, but maybe we'll figure it out with interesting rhythms. But let's start with something basic and see how it sounds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search my audio samples for some kind of kick. If we go back to this Lex Luger drum kit. I'm booming. Yeah, let's go with something simple for now. So normalize. I think this already is. So normally you have a rise and there's like a snare kick. So maybe we'll roll with something like that. So just making something up here as we go along. Max those velocities. Quite like the idea of not having a kick on the first and the fifth, but we'll see how that sounds later on when we add other elements. I feel like it keeps the listener guessing. What we'll do is we'll just duplicate that for now. And again, as we see fit, we can sort of mess around with where things go. And I'll get rid of this channel for now. So when I loaded the project for the first time, I have a default Ableton template where I try and have my things already sort of divvied up into the way I would normally have them. So you have like a group for sound effects, sub, intro synths, mids, general intro stuff, and then drums. And then in each group, and this one here, there's what's called a trigger channel. So if you write a MIDI note in there in a clip, say for example in here, it will send the external instrument to a ducking VST on the group, so you can basically duck things in a line with the kick yourself, and you can shape how that would look as well. So I quite like this, so maybe we'll try and overlay that, and maybe what we'll do is I'll have a slight fade in as well. So I don't know if you can see there, but if I just nudge in a fade in, and maybe let's just see what it sounds like if I overlay it. If I just duplicate these. So we're really sort of blending two different elements here. I'm going to drop this down to about -18 maybe at a guess, and I might drench that in a bit more reverb as well, just this particular snare. get more of that head in maybe. So if I just, maybe I'll grab some of these. There's something interesting going on there. See how that sounds together. Yeah, I like the sound of that. That sounds interesting. You've got this sort of tail going on. So I'm just going to keep those minimized for now. Right, what other samples did we have? So I downloaded all of them, and I noticed that one of them sounded quite interesting. Some of the vocals. So that's something we already got. I'm going to drop that in for now, just in case I end up using it. Yeah, I've decided basically just to merge a bit of everything, but I think it was this acapella.
I wish I was there when your mesh did.
Yeah, I didn't like that one, so I like this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dump that in there. Name that Vox for now, and then we'll see what this sounds like layered on top. And maybe I'll turn this into an instrument in and of itself and use that to create some more interesting melodies, perhaps. I don't know if this was intended, but I haven't had to transpose any of the samples and they all layer on top of each other. So they just happen to be in the same key. Like it worked out really well. So I liked the sound of that. I'll listen to that once more. I like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a technique which you hear on most of the big records nowadays where they distort the living shit out of the vocals. So you can hear the tones, but it's just crushed to the hell. So I'm going to have some fun trying to work out how they do that. First, a smidgen of OTT, methinks. Put the limiter in front, drop the amount down so it's processing it in parallel. I think it might be some kind of overdrive, but we'll solo the channel and see how it sounds. Maybe it's a mids distort preset. My god, that sounds like it already. So one useful thing about Ableton is when you highlight over any of the parameters, you know, down here it gives you a brief bit of text as to what the hell it's actually doing, so you can kind of get an idea of what's happening. Right, I think we're probably about time to add something a bit more dirty in terms of bass and kicks. I'm just going to move those over, nudge those up, because I think we want to put some kind of sub kick in here at C#1, and maybe we'll layer that with the existing sort of shorter kick. Let's just stick something ridiculous like that in for starters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to again fade in that kick, so we'll get rid of the initial attack of the kick and we'll just use the sustain part. Let's just add this and just see how it goes. It's probably going to sound absolutely ridiculous to start with. Start with. What you can do is two ways. I think what I'll do is I'll add a sidechain compressor to that sub kick just so that we definitely know it's definitely being ducked in time. So we'll do it post FX and we'll just reduce the threshold and just see if we can make it duck. So that's the gain reduction, isn't it? Here, yeah, gain reduction, and that's being triggered by that short-term kick. This one, you can see it there. So one thing you can do is set up something called the choke, which means when one thing is played, stops the playback of another. If I say take that snare and set that to 1 and also set this sub kick to 1, what that means is when that snare plays, it should just cut the kick. So we'll hopefully hear something sharp. So as soon as it hits this point here, this kick here, sorry, this one, will just stop triggering and it'll just cut instantly there. So let's see how that sounds like. So I quite like that. What I'd like to do as well is maybe do some pitch equalization on that sub. So this is everything we saw before. So if I but it snaps it here, which is not necessarily what you want. All that's doing now is I've created an automation 1 octave up, and what it's doing here, you can see here, it's just transposing it. So maybe we can have some fun and games with. Dun dun dun. So that sounds kind of interesting, slightly ridiculous, but interesting. That sounds like real trap shit. Right, so if I solo these for now, let's just see how it sounds, because what I can do is I can get it triggering perhaps with the kick so that this ducks, everything in the intro group ducks, and we'll see how much more room that creates in the mix for the kick. I mean, to be honest, everything we've got in so far isn't bassy at all, so like if we just have a look, I can't imagine we'll see massive amount of content down here compared to everywhere else, but let's have a listen. Yeah, so it sort of rolls off below like 170 or so. So I doubt we'll hear much difference. But what we'll do is we'll do a volume shaper on it, so it'll bring everything down. So if I set, what I need to do here is let's use this to trigger that instrument. So if I group this, look at the chain in the instrument rack here, and there's an instrument called external instrument. If I drop that in here so that this MIDI note triggers both the kick and this instrument here, and I set the MIDI output to, set it to intro, and it's found that shaper box VST here. So now it's going to be triggering this on this group. So let's see how that sounds. Let's listen to it in context with everything, but you can see there how the kick's triggering this ducking. I mean, it sounds pretty ridiculous, but maybe I'll just nudge this up here so it's not completely removing the entirety of the signal. So yeah, there's like a momentarily in time at this point here, the intro is effectively reading 0 or negative inf, 0 amplitude, negative inf dB, because this is being completely dropped at this point here in the signal. So if we solo it, we can hear it. It should be a bit more obvious. So this is with it. And then with it disabled. Just that melody I just thought of there. So if let me get a piano in there as well, maybe we'll have some sort of dark piano as the intro. Yeah, maybe we can make an ARP of that in some strange way. Let's do some recording and see how it comes out. Very dark sounding, but sounds interesting. We do that. Let's maybe get rid of the kick in this, or get rid of this. What we can do is we can start to build some kind of differences in the track to kind of make up something. Maybe these could go in almost as mids, because that's what they are, because I'm going to be using them more than for the intro. So what I should do really is duplicate this instrument and send it to the mids as well, because this is more for the intro here, isn't it? This Vox vocal loop. And this Vox really should have its own group as well. So I'll leave it out here for now. And maybe I'll play around with those vocals that we selected. And I think in order to do that, I'm just going to make a simple, at least initially, I'll make a simple noise sound effect using the Operator FM synth. So if I just rename this to SFX noise. So this is the synth here. I'm just going to group that. And it should default to, I think, a sine. Yeah, here it is. So what I'll do is I'll just do noise white, turn it right down. It can be very loud. And what I'll do is I will create an EQ directly after. I'll turn off these nodes here, and instead we'll use low cut and a high cut either side. What we'll do is we'll turn the mapping mode on in Ableton, so anything in green is a configurable macro. So if I left click that and then map that to this dial here, you can see now I can use this dial here to modulate that. And then if I turn it off and then go to this one, turn it back on, and go to the frequency dial for here, you can now see that this single macro is dialed to both the low cut and the high cut filters. What you can do then is up here in the mappings is change the range. So if I play that as is, we'll see what this sounds like. So there's your very basic sort of noise sweep. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change it so that you have a bit more energy rolling through across the maps, something maybe a bit more like that. So you can see how it's sort of, each parameter is different in time now. You can make it do all kinds of crazy stuff by overlapping and all sorts. So that sounds interesting. So let's go off map mode. Again, let's add some reverb for this. Let's put it after the EQ. Maybe something like that. It can be sometimes a good idea to play with the limiter at the end, so I'm just going to have that roll in maybe. Maybe something more like that. Whilst it plays like, I think I'll add a section here. Go the other way in terms of the automation. So let's find C3 again. Let's legato that, and then what we'll do is we'll take the macro and we'll do a sweep up. So just the reverse of what we did before, and see how that sounds ready for the sort of bass drop here. So that's one layer which is done and sounds interesting. It might be good to add some symbols as well, but I'll leave that as is for now. What else? Okay, so one thing that's worth noting when doing these sort of things is it's probably a good idea to consolidate and normalize the signal. Oh, preferably when SonarWorks isn't doing its thing. So all that does is in Ableton is once it's consolidated, if we go to the clip settings here, we can see that it's peaking at about negative 11.5. So what I find to keep everything, how do I say, to gain stage things properly, if I now normalize that to 0 and we just remember that it's a negative 11.5, what we can do is just take that down to 21.5, and then this reading here is an accurate representation of where the peak should be for that sample. Let's have a listen to this one here. So you can see there where the max, the peak is reading. So that's in line with the fader. And what I'll do is that's identical. So I'll just duplicate that, and I'll do the same for to this. So we're looking at about negative 12.5. So if I zero that, so that would be minus 22.5 here, and then we'll duplicate that there as well. I'll add another riser. I think what I'll do is I'll do that classic SFX trap riser. We've heard it all before, but I'll have a stab at making it. So it's just going to be the sort of square waves you hear, which are increasing in pitch, and they are usually an LFO is controlling them to trigger on and off. So it might sound something like this. So if we set this to square, and then what we can do is we can create this, use this LFO here, turn it into a square as well. And if we turn this level right down, but then use this LFO to automate that volume control, and let's say trigger it to eighth notes, or the typical one, isn't it, is triplet 8 notes. And then what we can do is we can take this other LFO, set it to a really long, say, I don't know, let's say 2 bars, and in the matrix here we can set that LFO to, no, we don't want that, we want this CRS one, whatever that means. I think I can do it manually here. Coarse pitch. So you can already hear it there, that absolute classic sound. What we'll do is I'll max it out here and I'll lower it down in the channel strip. So that's basically it in terms of the sound generation. And what we can do is we can just add some effects to make it sound a bit more interesting, perhaps. There's a clicking going on, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to decrease the sort of step change, smoothen the step change slightly to see if I can get rid of that clicking noise. Yeah, so that did something. So before it was like this. You can hear that sort of high-end sort of clicking going on, and if I just smoothen it out. Whilst being careful not to make it too smooth to turn into some sort of triangle wave sort of modulation. Let's add maybe some delay. You can already hear how sort of different that sounds. Maybe some multi-band compression again here, so that's fine. Maybe a bit of reverb. See, we can also use this LFO to sweep this frequency. I suppose you have to be a bit careful that the level, the frequency rather, in which you are modulating is sort of nominally in line with the pitch of the sweep, or the sweep of the pitch here rather. Otherwise, you might be boosting different things at different times. But if it sounds good, it sounds good. So that's all that really matters, I suppose. So let's just drop that in for this sort of rise here, maybe, and see how it sounds again. So let's just drop that down there. That sounded interesting. I might go down an octave and see how that sounds. So you can see there it sweeps quite nicely. It's quite hard to hear, but if I solo it, there's definitely a tail here because of the reverb units on the sound effects. So what I'm going to do to prevent that from bleeding over and so we get a nicer sort of vocal drop here, I will add a utility, turn it off, but have it set to mute the channel strip. And then if I automate the effect to turn on and off, what I can do is I can just snap that to the on position and then leave it on probably to about here once the tail's decayed off. So it should just cut at that point now. So there. So even though there's some residual signal, this utility's just cut it completely. So let's see how it's little things like that which make the track a bit cleaner. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Okay, and then maybe for this limiter, maybe I'll just have it coming in. That sounds good. The drop sounds pretty empty because the vocal loop sort of suddenly cuts and the piano disappears. So let's see if I create a new, I'll use the audio channel here, and let's call it Vox drop for now, and see maybe we can make something interesting out of this. So just something as simple as what I just did then. I just reversed the whole audio file, and already I quite like the sound of that section there. And maybe we can sort of chop and change from the forwards in time. Maybe we can mix and match some things going backwards with something going forwards, and we can cut up our own sort of little melody maybe. And then maybe we could have that filtering in again in this rise area maybe. See that little section might go nicely here somewhere. There you go. So that could be a sort of call and response kind of thing going on there. We can roll with that to start with. It's quite a busy kind of arrangement, but it's only going to be a short loop anyway, really. So it can go from nothing to something quite quick, I think, and I'm sure it will sound okay. Yeah, and what we'll do is we will create a riser here, but instead of cutting it, we will just carry it on, and we will sweep accordingly so that it goes to the top here, and then perhaps we can make use of this again actually, and just sort of sweeps back down. So what we'd need to do is probably need to add some kind of tail creating effect, so delay or reverb, so that it sort of blends out nicely with the other elements. Right, so let's audition this vocal sample that I dropped in ages ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snap these with the 1, 2, 3, 4, so at least we have it synchronized. So I think we're looking at about 110 for this sample, for the vocal samples. So let's have some fun and games and try and align it and see if it's in pitch or not.
I'm sorry, I made you sad.
Well, it goes, sort of. I transposed it up one semitone. What we'll do is we'll get rid of this click track at the beginning, and it seems to be in sync. What I'll do is I'm going to create a Vox shouts track. What I'll do is I'll take bits from here that I like and I'll just drop them down.
Was there when you're mad? Sorry.
So maybe what we'll do is we'll have that sorry sort of bit just before the drop. We'll see what that sounds like.
Sorry. Sorry.
So transpose that back down and
Sorry.
maybe we'll speed that up.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I made. Sorry.
We're going chipmunk mode.
Sorry.
Still getting used to Ableton 10, even though I've had it for quite some time now. I quite like that, so there's sort of this variation here, which jumps an octave. Let's see what else we can pull from this track here.
I didn't want to break your.
That's good, so let's use that phrase there.
I didn't want to see you falling apart.
Maybe we can have that down here. Delete everything else. Let's just see what it sounds like. So that's obviously out of the key, so let's split that there and split it at the end of the phrase, and we can transpose that till it sounds good. So it's just this bit here, I think. That probably needs to go down semitone. There you go. Well, that sounds interesting. I might add a gate to the signal because even when he's not singing, there seems to be some background noise there. So what I'll do is first I'll consolidate everything. as we've done before. Don't forget to uncheck the sonar works. So we've got that section, we've got that section. Cool. Okay, let's gate that now. So for the gate, it makes sense in the signal chain to have it at the very beginning. We'll reduce the threshold, and we'll just try it for this area here. I could go through and manually delete those areas, but let's just use a gate. Quite an interesting bit there, actually. Maybe I'll add some gain to that. That sounds good. Now you've got this really sort of I don't know how you describe it, sort of enveloping kind of vocals which are dancing around the track, because we've got this sort of one here which sounds good. It's sort of playing with the ears from left to right. Then we've also got the phrases from the actual vocals. So some of it's intelligible, some of it's just noises. Yeah, so one thing I could have done earlier is, so on my master chain, I tend to have an EQ like this, sort of this low pass EQ, cutting it around 100 Hertz. And it's useful because when you listen back to your music in its entirety, if you're listening, if it just lets you hear what the low end sounds like. Also, it's worth noting I have a utility here with bass mono enabled below 120 Hertz, because you tend to want to have more mono signals at the lower you go in frequency, sort of bass, sub bass, and whereas it's more normal to tend to have more stereo signals above those sort of frequencies. So, for example, the reverb and yeah, what we'll do is we'll just enable this and just play from the rise to the drop and see how that sounds. Yeah, so I like that because it slaps. I don't know how well the recording's going to pick it up on Open OBS Broadcast Studio because of the way I've had to route my audio. But in the final render, it should be a bit more obvious what's going on. But yeah, no, I'm content with that. So I think we're okay there. Right, where to go from here? So I think we could do is we could have some fun and games with Serum and make maybe our own sort of our own little leads maybe, because we haven't in this, because so far in this production, all I've really done is used sample pack for the drums, albeit I've customized them and layered and added my effects and blended them myself. We haven't really done any sort of synthesis ourselves, so like it's quite fun to sometimes just mess around. Maybe I could see if I've made something from earlier. So this is all my own patches that I've made over the years. But maybe there's something from here we can pull in. If not, we could make a modified version of it, or we could make something from scratch that suits the track. Maybe a simple sine pluck might add some atmosphere, maybe sort of jumping up and down an octave. So what I might do is I might put this into a channel of its own, because I don't actually, what I can do is I can do it this way, because I don't want, if I do like a sine pluck on every quarter note, or really I want it being sent straight to the master because it's being ducked by this shaper box, and I don't necessarily want that to happen. And something like that, it sounds, just adds a bit of atmosphere. So yeah, something like that, just a bit of ear candy. I quite liked adding the attack to that, so maybe we could have, what we could do is we could add a lead synth try this. And what we could do is we could have that side chaining the vocals so that they're not fighting for space in the mix in order to get some kind of melody going. Give that a go. Yeah, something like that. That could be fun. Okay. Let's just have that in there for now. And I can just modify the notes. I can modify the notes. I'm not really keen on this, to be honest. That's starting to sound a little bit trappy. Send it through. So I haven't used any of these. This is some of the newest stuff in Ableton 10. So maybe we'll just have that coming in sort of in the second half of the drop, and I will add a sidechain compressor at the end of the signal chain but before the limiter, and have the lead synth ducking that when it's playing so we're not getting too overwhelming in the mix. You can see the gain reduction again being applied by the signal output from the lead synth. So I think we could maybe make use of some sliding notes for this one. It almost sounds like a very shitty MIDI guitar, doesn't it? So again, the reason we can hear the playback when I highlight it is because we've got this MIDI editor preview. I find it useful for like coming up with melodies because I can just highlight over them in the time that I want to play them, so it helps me know where to place them. So I think this is as many elements as we might want in terms of the elements of the track, because it's getting quite busy now, I think, and it's kind of difficult to know what's going on. To be honest, I might just call it there. We didn't end up needing this sub track because we are using an 808 style kick as the sub, so that's sort of layered in drum kit, so I can probably delete those. We could always do more with some sound effects and stuff. To be honest, some basic noise and that sort of square wave riser we did sounds decent for now. So I'll just trim those tracks, trim those. I haven't made use of the triggers because we've got the kick applying the shaper box. Okay, so to add a tiny bit of outro, what I'm going to do is I am just going to create a basic delay, and then I might add a frequency shifter at the end and have it going down in frequency. Let's first have some delay. What we'll do is, so we're doing this on the guitar channel. What we'll do is just at the very end, I'll automate it to turn it on for the last few notes, so that thereafter the signal goes into the unit here, and we'll have a nice long delay here. And what I'll do is I'll just duplicate that and put that same effect here, and the automation is copied over as well, so it'll be the same for this ambient signal here. We'll see what that sounds as it ends. So obviously there's that lead synth still playing. So what I might do there is I might add similar to before, I might add a mute, turn it off, but automate it to turn on just after the end of the last note. And then it's usually good to add an end marker. And usually it's good to have a start marker as well, because these are where you'd actually render your track to and from. And it tends to be a good idea to just leave a little bit of silence at the beginning, a little bit of silence at the end, so that we're not rendering straight from a non-zero sample, and that it doesn't end at a non-zero sample as well. So that's good. So when I would be rendering, you have to set these markers here to what you want to render. So it would look something like that, and I'd be rendering all of this. Well, add some kind of basic lazy mastering, and then render that. So listen to it once more. Okay, I like that. I've noticed the lead synth sort of seems a bit, listening to it in context of the whole song, it sort of comes in a bit sort of harsh and sort of stops a bit suddenly. So I think I'll have a fade in here, maybe a fade out here. But this is why I say it's the importance of listening to the whole track in its entirety and trying not to solo things as much as possible. Yes, I think we'll leave it there for now, rather than spending an unholy amount of time on this like I've been doing my EP stuff, because that's taking forever. What we'll do now is unmark, let's delete this because we don't need that anymore. I've got some effects racks here I don't use. I'll disable the sonar works. So we played it through there, and I think we're peaking at about -1. So one good thing to do would probably be to, as if we were sending it to mastering, let's go down and take, say, 5 dB off everything. So I'm just going through each sub channel for the group, and I'm just bringing them down by -5. And so hopefully we'll be peaking now at about -6, because we've got this -1 there to start with. And that'll give us some headroom to play around with my iZotope Ozone 9 mastering suite. So it's a really good package. I'm just going to be very lazy and use the master assistant. So what this does is you click it and you audition the loudest part of your song, and it'll actually sort of go through and try and pick some best settings for you, and then it's a good starting point to take from there. So we'll start with that and see what happens. Okay, so I'll leave these settings the same, and now it's waiting for me to play audio. Sorry. Notice how it's -4 here, but I've set it to -3 here. It's because there's a ceiling at -1 dB. You can also set it to learn the threshold as you play back the song, and it will set the threshold to a target LUFS level. It's interesting because you think like, what is it trying to achieve? Because mastering is a bit of a dark art in and of itself, and it tends to happen, as we know, like after the mix down is done, everything else is polished. Usually, you would have the stems rendered by then, or you'd have the whole master track rendered, and you'd be modifying that instead. And to be honest, I think with the way that sounds, I'm just kind of happy to leave that as is, not looking to spend like a shit ton of time, like tweaking bits and pieces. It's just more for leveling in my mind. Let's just get rid of that ceiling, so we get an extra dB of goodness. Cool. Okay, so that's it really. I'll render it and upload it to SoundCloud.